Hello, welcome to Retro Toy Princess. I'm Allison Troy, and we are doing a Princess Leia color along today. And I have a guest,
Hi,
Emily.
hello, I'm Emily C. I am a toy maker and a creative, and honestly, I do so much digital lately that it's going to be super fun to return to the coloring page.
Yeah, yeah, that's was sort of my hope when we were sort of chatting about this. I was like, it's, I don't know, like I want people to sort of color more and get more creative in ways that aren't always computer based, even though we're doing it on a computer and it's streaming. You know, I think it's fun. So,
For sure.
and it's good for you.
Stuff like
Um,
this is what, sets an artist on the path to get to the more digital stuff. I mean, this is where it all began.
yeah, well, you have to, if you don't know color theory or you don't have an idea of any of it, you're not actually gonna. I think you're not as good if you can't do with the tactile physical part of it. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So it's always good to get back to it, and I think especially when you do things in digital art and that's your career, I think it's really easy to lose sight of the fun side of
Exactly.
it.
Oh yeah, this is the stuff that recharges the creative batteries for sure.
Yeah. So, and Carrie Fisher would have loved it. What was the quote? I don't, oh gosh, I just blanked on it. But it's, I don't want my life to imitate art. I want my life to be art.
Ooh, I love that.
So yeah, it's a pretty good one. She had some good ones. That one and, oh gosh, what's the other one? Of course, I'm spacing. I have all my notes. But anyway, she's got a lot of good.
She was so good. I had to grab these off of my shelf because they always live here. I love her books. It's
Yeah,
not like to plug them or anything on your channel, but like
wishful
I love her
drinking.
voice. She's
She's
hysterical.
very soothing with it. Yeah, I kind of like. Obviously, she read all of her own books on audio, except for the Princess Diarist. She had her daughter Billy read some
Mm.
of those. Um,
Whom I
but
loved in Scream Queens. Speaking of October, I feel like I need to watch it again. The first place I
yeah,
really came to love Billy.
I feel very protective of her. Like I hope she realizes that because Carrie was space mom to so many of us, she is now
Mhm.
space niece, and we are rooting for her.
Yes.
She's had, a couple babies. And
Hmm.
she's doing the same thing Carrie did with her, where she's kind of keeping them out of the spotlight, out of the media, like their faces are blanked out.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a huge social media footprint anyway, so
True.
unless she's on a show and she has to promote it, so that's the way you do it. So anyhow, um, one thing I do ask guests, what are you coloring with today?
All right, I am coloring with a nice pack of Crayola 100 coloring pencils.
Excellent.
I've colored in the past with Prismacolor in my college days, which were fantastic. I
Yeah.
don't have them around anymore, but this Prismacolor or this Crayola 100 pack should be awesome for me.
Yep. No, though, even though, you sort of sometimes hear people give Crayola a little bit of shade. It's 100% unwarranted. They are a really good quote unquote budget pencil, which is sort of a snotty way to refer to them. And that's sort of, I think all artists are a little snotty. So,
Of course.
um,
Well, we all fall in love with certain materials.
you know,
I think the Crayola is where it starts. This is the everyone's pencil.
yeah. So, yeah. So I'm using the Prismacolors because that's what I use the most, and I have a pretty good quote unquote skin recipe down for our space princess, our space mom. That starts with like eggshell and then cream, and then I add some oranges and stuff. So because contrary to popular belief, nobody we may say that nobody's really white. So there's a lot of oranges and pinks and browns and yeah, even in Caucasian skin, you have some color in there. I think
Very
people
true.
lose sight of that. So, but yeah, so I just start with the eggshell. So yeah. Um, so since this is sort of to celebrate Carrie Fisher and her legacy, and because I don't want to mope this year, I've moped every year since 2017.
Aw.
Just, like she was my first hero. And then when I was 16, I got postcards from the Edge for my birthday. So right when it came out in paperback. Um, and it was well cool because I hadn't realized she was writing until I got that. But also I was a really strange, weird, quirky teen. And her voice reminded, obviously it's a little narcissistic to say it that way, but it just felt like somebody spoke my language,
Mhm.
even though I clearly was not experiencing the sort of thing she was experiencing. But it was just really cool to have. Not only was it
Well, I
my
think,
child. Oh, sorry.
I think with Carrie, whether or not you have her same experiences, she feels so real. When you really, read through, or listen to her books, she sounds the most authentic, the most truthful, and just so funny, just so naturally funny.
Yeah, it's that sort of and it's not like she. I mean, obviously, a little bit you have to try to be funny, but it's not.
Oh, she
It's
wasn't
more
even
like
trying. She just had a
yeah.
hilarious, like, perspective though, right?
It was like it was this the way she saw the world had this wit to it that like that was the quote. If my life was just true, it wouldn't be funny. It's like the other one I like, and and that would be unacceptable. If it wasn't funny, it would just be true, and that's unacceptable. And once I heard that quote, I'm like, that I'm gonna steal that because it's a really good way of sort of getting through some of the really unfortunate things. And life is just like that. It gets unfortunate sometimes.
It's true. And Carrie's life wasn't without challenge.
It was well, especially with the mental health stuff that she sort of dealt with.
Mhm.
Um, at a time where we didn't, our our doctors didn't really understand it. Um, she had for a long time. It was just well, you have substance abuse issues, you're this, you're that. It was many years
Mhm.
before she actually got bipolar, and it wasn't even bipolar back then. It was still called manic depression. So, um, and then she's even said somewhere her like brain is in a science, is in like medical books because her chemistry was so unique. So definitely would not have been an easy, especially again, like it's a little bit easier now. We have come a long way from mental health, but we still have a ways to go, I think.
I think there's a lot more understanding of it and a lot more support now.
Yeah,
Not that it's perfect. It's still not like a perfect experience when you struggle. I've had a lot of it in my family
yeah,
struggles with mental health. Um, I feel like though one thing for Carrie is to have such a visually notable actor, really be truthful about it. That kind of visibility helps all of us to come to terms, to deal, and to feel supported and a little bit normal even when you have the struggles.
yeah. I mean, well, and that openness just again, I think part of the stigma is we don't like to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
We're not conditioned to. Sometimes, like depending on your job situation, sometimes your job might punish you for it in the ways that they can. So it's not easy, but I personally have noticed a lot of the people I know who have various forms of bipolar are way more willing to talk about it. And
Yeah,
almost
I have a
everyone,
family member with it. I think the struggle that he and his father have gone through is whether to medicate.
yeah.
Um, it's quite prevalent in my family. We actually have had a fair number of suicides as well.
Oh
Not to
my.
get too dark on your coloring
No,
channel,
no, not at
sorry.
all. She would talk about this stuff. So no, it's not too dark.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think Carrie would have hidden it.
Mm-mm, no,
Um,
not at all.
but yeah, I think speaking to your loved ones, they're your safety net. And Carrie clearly, had so many people that cared about her. Um, that's really where it's critical, is supporting each other through those kinds of challenges.
Yeah, if you don't have, and so, not everyone is fortunate enough. I mean, obviously, her mother adored her, and her brother seems like he was very supportive of her. Not everyone has that, but most people, I think, have support systems that they've built. It's just sort of finding that strength to like be able to ask for help or just to admit that things aren't perfect because that's not always easy to do.
Absolutely. To speak up when you need a little extra.
Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, again, like I said, several of the people I know with bipolar are way more um, open isn't necessary. They're just way more communicative about like, oh wow, my meds aren't doing what my meds need to do today. I'm gonna be a little off and I need to go take my meds. So
Well, and that's the other thing, like when it's brain chemistry, there should be no shame in something like medication.
not at all.
Um,
Like not everything. Like I deal with certain depression issues, and I do know every time somebody's like, "Oh, you should just go for a walk." It's like, yeah, if I could do that, like that would be great. Thanks.
can't you
Uh,
just improve your energy?
right? Your aura is a little brown. Why, thank you. I'm gonna stay in bed all day with my brown aura. And instead of being miserable for no reason, I'm now miserable in your direction. Thank you so much for giving me a focus. I was not focused before in my unhappiness. Now it's directed to you. So, yeah, and that's some people's gifts. They get to be your scapegoat because they're clods about things. So, but yeah, and that obviously shouldn't ever. People do need to learn to stop giving bad advice to people who are struggling. Like there are ways you can support people without telling them to go exercise or get sunlight, or you just gotta plow your way through it. It's like not everyone can just plow their way through it. So, oh,
I think it's tough for other people to advise you when you're going through a struggle. And I
yeah,
think often it can land at like, it's all going to work out for you. It's all going to be better, or these kind of platitudes that feel good for them to say,
right. I
but
did what
not
I could.
necessarily helpful to you.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's like if you haven't been, it's like my grandmother had what we didn't call it bipolar back then. It was probably even before they called it manic depression because that's very much a 80s thing that it started. And she was not diagnosed for a really long, not really until the end of her life.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
also, but yeah, it's like one of my aunts has not happy experiences because it was particularly bad for a while, and she often was the focal point of the not so great times. Um, but also, it was the 1960s, and if you admitted to that then, they sometimes just sent you away and you didn't come back.
That's
Or
true. What would the reaction have been?
yeah, like she was a woman back then, and like women sometimes just got sent away to places whenever they were
Oh,
inconvenienced, much less with actual mental illness. So I would assume some of her fear around sort of whenever my mom and her sisters and brothers were growing up, I would assume some of my grandmother's fears were something like that because
hmm,
you could just go away and not come back.
for
Um,
sure.
so, which like that's another not quite a
That's so
connection.
interesting that it went all the way back to your grandma and that you
Yeah,
can trace it through your family tree.
yeah, we can get that far back with it. And ironically, she's actually not ironically, she's the reason I am a collector and why I have some of the toys that are still on my shelf because I would go spend summers with her and often I guess it was during her happy time. So
Mm, the highs.
well, yeah, so 1978, summer of 1978, it was a good time to for grandma to be in her good mood whenever we would hit the Woolworths or the Gibsons or Ben Franklin or Nichols or I think I went home that summer to my to my parents from my grandparents with like had probably four A New Hope, well, just Princess Leia, Organa, because it was not A New Hope back then.
Sure.
And she liked R2D2 because the head would click, so I had lots of R2D2, and she liked 3PO because of the vac metal, which I do too. Which
Oh yeah. Ugh, everybody
I've
loves
got the
Spectrum.
vac metal acrylics because nothing like vac metal.
Nothing like it. That's been one of my as a toy maker, one of my like I would love to get back metal somewhere. I finally did once. I've only got to use it once. But it's an interesting thing in the production world. It's
Yeah.
gone through different phases of like different manufacturers being able to do it.
Well, as someone who does a lot of customization, I've looked into sort of what because you hear certain things like, oh, well, we can't do this. And then you look into it and it's like, well, it's not necessarily that you can't do it. It's that it's an expensive process for mass production.
Yep. So then you need a special price point for a back metal item
Yeah.
that then people don't quite understand why they would need to pay.
And then if it's too much of an action oriented figure, that vac metal is going to rub off. It also
Yeah.
takes a specific type of plastic, which is why all of our, like getting a vintage C3PO from the original Kenner collection back in the 70s and 80s, it's really hard to find one that doesn't have paint rubs or cracked or whatever because it's a different kind of plastic. That's why his hands always broke off.
Yeah, certain ways to treat plastic can make it more fragile.
Yeah. So
Sorry, we just took a swerve into very like
yeah,
toy industry. You said
yeah,
back
no,
metal. It's
no,
always on my bucket list, back metal, like every time I get to do it, but it's
yeah,
an
no.
interesting manufacturing technique.
Anytime I see it, I'm excited because it's so cool. And but my grandmother left that, so it's a big part of my sort of Star Wars childhood was like the figures she liked were the ones I would get. Like she thought Harrison Ford was very handsome, so I had.
Oh my gosh, my mom did too.
I think it does run in the family because he probably was, but it was way more of the Indiana Jones Harrison Ford than the Han Solo one.
Oh, I think my mom liked the Han Solo one. I'm sure she didn't mind the Indy one.
I liked the Indy one, but I just I will say like the one thing I always liked about um sort of the women that they at least originally Temple of Doom kind of threw this formula off, but I always enjoyed that like at least in Star Wars movies and the first Indiana Jones movie, they always paired Harrison Ford with like sort of a tough, sassy, independent-esque woman for the times.
Yeah.
He
You're
could
kind of
hold her
talking
own.
about the Marion versus the Willie.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to speak poorly of Mr. Spielberg's second wife, but his first wife was almost cast over Carrie Fisher for Princess Leia. So
I didn't
it,
know that. No way.
yeah, it came down to because Brian De Palma. This is all of the nerdy stuff I know. So Brian De Palma and George Lucas are friends, going back to like film school, and they were casting Carrie and Star Wars at the same time. So they were seeing all the same actors and actresses for those roles.
Oh, how funny.
And George Lucas really liked Amy Irving for Princess Leia, and
Mhm.
like among the finalists were Carrie Fisher, Amy Irving, Cindy Williams like from Laverne and Shirley went for it because she was like an American what oh gosh, American Graffiti, but it doesn't sound like she actually got far in the process. But it was Carrie Fisher, Amy Irving, Jodie Foster, and Terry Nunn from Berlin, the lead singer of Berlin, because she was originally an
Oh,
actress.
really?
Yeah, like there was a behind the well, it actually eventually ended up on one of the first DVD sets with all of the behind the scenes stuff where you can actually see Jodie Foster's audition is not on there, but Terry Nunn's is on there. Cindy Williams is on there.
Oh
Amy
my
Irving
gosh,
was
I'll
not
have to go find it.
Irving didn't get as far in the process because Brian De Palma very early on was like, "No, I want her for Carrie. She's going to be Sue Snell." And the of the auditions they show is like as soon as it's Carrie and she's auditioning with Harrison, and it's just like, they had the little thing where she looks at the camera, Carrie Fisher, this is my age. But as soon as like the audition starts, it's just Leia is there suddenly from the beginning.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Terry,
Leia was her
yeah, like I
spirit.
think on YouTube, so I would check because it's funny. As soon as it starts, she does the thing with her hair like this, and she's like, "The joy is an art too." Like from the get go, even a little bit of the faux British, even there, and that was when she
That
went.
comes and goes, God love her.
Yeah, well, everyone's like, "Why does she have that faux British accent?" It's like Carrie Fisher was going to the Shakespeare Academy of
Mm.
acting in London and had been living there for a few months, almost a year. And her first scenes that she filmed on Star Wars after living in England all that time was with Peter Cushing and David Prowse, and it was those scenes like Governor Tuck, and I thought I detected your foul stench when I was brought on board. The more you tighten your grip, Tuck, and the more star systems will slip through your fingers, like that. All of that.
I was, I was just listening to I love a podcast called Blast Points. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
Oh, it's fantastic. I especially love it. Sorry, I keep plugging things on your stream, but I love
No,
it
that's
because
fine.
the guys get just very excited about Star Wars. And whereas often, a fandom can sometimes take a negative turn,
Yeah,
these guys love it. They love it so much, and it just always I listen to it and I leave with good feelings. But they just were talking about the secret found behind the scenes of Yoda in Return of the Jedi, and
yeah,
like they were found just on someone's tape, and listening through to them and all of the different takes that like Frank Oz and everybody did, and um, I love the behind the scenes stuff. I'm not like an aficionado on it, but I
yeah,
love to find it and to dig in.
yeah. I like a lot of that also. I don't know. It's real, especially when it's a Star Wars because it's such a huge thing. Like all of that behind the scenes stuff is just
Yeah. The channel has gone into like the making of and the creature shop for
oh
behind the
wow,
scenes creature making and like done interviews. They just did an interview with Jeannie, who was in the creature shop making Droopy McCool.
oh my
I
gosh.
just love that behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, well, especially the sort of creature shop because, especially with the Jedi, like at that point they were sort of they knew what they were doing, and it's like they
Hmm.
really just sort of pushed like yeah they went beyond like the first one is like a bunch of off the shelf masks and a few specific creatures, and Empire didn't have other than the Wampa it's not a lot of creatures in that, and then
I
Jedi
think as
was
well, like to find the moments where they're talking about the hands-on craft, that they were carving foam with a chainsaw, like to make the buck underneath that you'd then skin with the silicone. Like that stuff's fantastic. That's the hands-on, just like this coloring process.
there's yeah like yeah I'm definitely not an anti CGI person. um
Yeah, I think it's brought its own interesting things to the craft of filmmaking,
yeah
but you have to kind of love the hands-on too.
I what I have found is like it for me works best when it's sort of used to enhance sort of like the real world parts of it. Like one of the things I did appreciate about the sequel trilogy, I enjoyed all of those movies. They have their parts
Mhm.
that are not so great, but it's Star Wars. For me, I
It's
can't
still
not
Star
put
Wars, yeah.
it right.
There's moments I wish, like, that the story gelled better amongst the sequel movies, but there's still moments to cheer for and, edge of your seat.
Yeah, I mean, like for The Force Awakens, like the first time at the theater when I was sitting there, and as soon as the ship opens and Princess Leia, well, General Organa comes out, it's the same swell I got like in 1980 when we went and saw Empire, and like the first time she's on screen, it's just like, of course, at that point I screamed Princess Leia, and my mom was like, you can't do that. It was just exciting. That's the whole reason I went to see any of those movies. Um, because that my entire play pattern as a kid was Princess Leia. Like, sure, the guys were there, but most of the adventures were Leia and the droids shooting stormtroopers. Not
Oh, nice. Just like our pose here with the blaster.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
she was an action heroine. I mean,
Yeah,
I
she was.
loved finding heroines in the days when I was a kid that were beautiful and strong. There's nothing like that combination, you know?
Well, there's when she got the script for uh, Star Wars, at the end, whenever they have the ceremony, like the script says she is staggeringly beautiful, and Carrie Fisher went and she crossed out the beautiful so that it said she is staggering, which I only realized like the first time I read that I was much younger and sort of because often people will like wow when somebody is really beautiful they say oh wow she's really or he's very staggering in his
Mhm.
sort of that, and that's how I always took it, but it's also like somebody looking at them and sort of thinking of them as
Arresting a
staggering.
presence.
It's
Yeah.
a completely different vibe than saying like, "Oh, she's staggeringly beautiful," like, she's staggering. She
Well,
just
how
meant
interesting that Carrie was already in the era of the first movie thinking to herself, "There's so much more
yeah.
than beautiful," you know?
Oh, yeah,
Because that's what she became to so many people.
she really did, like, it's really, it's really yeah, it's really, like, she did a lot with sort of a role that could've like, for instance, if Cindy Williams from Laverne and Shirley had got it, Leia just wouldn't have been the icon she was. Um,
Absolutely.
I could maybe see Jodie Foster getting it, but at that age, Jodie Foster was still very I don't unsure is not the correct word, but Jodie Foster didn't really hit sort of that
Not
place
at her
where
full power level yet,
yeah,
like,
it was sort of after it was during Silence of the Lambs where she
oh my god, yes.
finally hit that point where it was like there was despite the sort of not vulnerability is not quite the right word for Clarice. There's still like insecurity in Clarice, and part of that movie is her overcoming that insecurity.
I like the
Um,
word that you used, overcoming. Clarice is frightened. She is straight up scared, but she's working through it and pushing
yeah,
through it.
yeah, Claire. I went and saw that when it came. Ironically, my yearbook teacher took like she was also our small towns like your teachers do triple and double
Yes.
duty. And that was the year we had to do our first term paper, and I was doing mine on serial killers.
Or love it. That's when the
And
teacher's like,
we had to go to this sort of big city to the college library so that I could get references, and it was me, my teacher, one of my best friends since like 5th grade, Rusty, and Rashonda, and she was like, "There's this movie that just started about a serial killer called Silence of the Lambs. Why don't we go see that after we finish?" Oh, my poor teacher, because there's that one scene with Buffalo Bill, and she
yeah.
just went, "Oh my God, children, close your eyes." So Rusty and I did, she did, but Rashonda did not. Rashonda was just, her reaction was very good. Like it was kind of like, oh, hell no, he didn't. And I was just like, oh. But I didn't. It wasn't until VHS where I watched, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm
So
glad I
that's what
didn't see
Buffalo
that.
Bill was about.
Yeah, and my teacher was very much like, okay, you kids, we did not go see this. I don't want to get fired for that. My
Yeah,
parents,
yeah.
they were pretty.
Unsolicited field trip. Nowadays, you probably have to get 1,000 signatures for
It would be,
a
oh
field trip.
God, it would be all over TikTok. Rusty's mom would have got on TikTok and done a video, and it'd be all over. But I don't know. Late '80s, early '90s, stuff just happened, and you just rolled with it. Like,
We just found it.
yeah, it made you tougher. And I wanted for a while. I was like, I should become an FBI profiler and solve crimes. And then I saw sort of what it takes to become a profile, and I'm like, I'm okay with not doing that.
Do you like to watch true crime dramas?
I do. I've also gotten though to the point where I question the ethics of a lot of true crime, so I'm not watching
Like,
it.
are they glamorizing it? Is that what you
Some,
mean?
yeah, like there's some, or like how much does it take away from the actual person that has been like the victims and their families. Like
Yes, yes.
there's some of them that I still listen to because it really does sort of put the victims and their families at the forefront. But there's some of it where it's really, especially in the day of podcasts. I'm not gonna trash talk Crime Junkie or anything. But there are some that really, Crime Junkie really sort of glorify and turn it into sort of giggly banter, and it just, I mean, that from the get-go always made me feel uncomfortable. But during the
I hear
pandemic
that.
and lockdown, like I was watching probably too much. um, but I also at that point started realizing that I wanted to be ethical in consuming it, so I sort of stopped watching anything where the families are not participating. And so
I
it's
really like that point of view about it. I've dabbled in true crime, but
yeah,
not heavily watched. But some of them do. I think there was one about Jeffrey Dahmer that I was like, feel uncomfortable about how this is portraying him.
yeah, there was that a Netflix series, I think it was.
Yeah, that's the one.
I skipped that because before it even came on, families of his victims were on they were on my TikTok, and despite being as old as I am, I quite enjoy TikTok. Um, it probably doesn't help my attention span. On those nights where I can't sleep, I'll jump on TikTok and watch stuff, and I throw my coloring shorts up on there. Um, that's it, why not? Like I'm making them anyway. Let's throw those on there as well. And often when every time I throw one of the Leia pictures up there are a couple of different. There's one lady for sure that I have followed since, which it was really cool because I followed like my first week on TikTok. She was one of my first follows because she had cool Star Wars toys. I was
Oh,
like, wait,
cool.
wait, the anti-racism thing you're talking about is entirely amazing, and I'm loving it. But like, can I see your toys? And she's like, oh, there's a whole playlist. Um, and it looks like she had also every Yoda. She's a big Yoda
Mm. I am
fan. And
fascinated by people who love to collect like a single character, and I always end up thinking those collections are so cool. I myself do not have the restraint.
I didn't. I used to be all in, and then around Attack of the Clones, it was really hard to be all in because
Hmm.
there was a lot of it, and that was sort of the phase where it started, like, and this is not at all a diss because some people need 17,000 Jedi Lukes with slight variances to be happy, and I love that for them. My Leia shelf 100% supports them in the way of that. Because my Leia shelf is another New Hope Leia. I'm in. Um, like it just, she's my character. Like she's my
Yeah, when you identify with one so much.
yeah. But I am fascinated by when fans, like I briefly, and by briefly, like 2 or 3 weeks, dated a guy when I lived in Austin who his character was Walrus Man. And
Oh
I'm like,
my
"Well,
gosh,
he's
Panda
Ponda
Baba.
Baba now." He's like, "No, no, Walrus Man." And I'm
No,
just,
Walrus Man. We called them Walrus Man
yeah,
and Hammerhead.
yeah, like it's, it was just a very curious choice. Like your character shows up, gets his arm ripped off, his mouth kind of looks like it's got like a peach or a baby's butt in it. Okay, I love that for you. It was just a weird, and a weird sort of, yeah, just a whole weirdness about his love of. I could get the Cantina aliens because it's, that was my mother's favorite characters when I was growing up were the 79 when all those Cantina characters hit.
Oh,
Like
really?
she was like, "I'm gonna go see if they have any new figures for you." And she come home with like 2 or 3. I had a lot of Greedo. She loved Greedo. She was
Mhm.
very happy when he
I
got
love
to
any
shoot
Rodian.
first.
I
When he
honestly
went
love
from
any Rodian. I think they're such a cool design.
Yeah, they really are. Well, and it's very what I think is cool about that design is Rhodians are very sort of stereotypical alien designs,
Classic Alien? Yeah, I
but
hear that.
they're also not at the same time they're not. Like you've got the little antenna, you've got the big eyes, but they're not. At the same time they're really not. And they do all wear the same apparently wear the same vest during the
I
original.
know. They all are into the seafoam suit and the same vest.
And those are not colors that work for me. They wash me out, especially the like lemony, orangey, sherbet colored vests. Not so much, but
I think I've moved past at my age colors that work for me into colors I enjoy wearing.
that's kind of where I am. But luckily, it tends to cross over. I do know that
Mhm.
one of the last times I went somewhere, I was in an outfit and somebody was like, "You're dressing like a Star Wars character meets Wonder Woman." I'm like, "That's exactly what I am going for, so thank you. I don't know if you meant that as an insult, but it
You
totally
exactly
made my
captured the
day."
vibe I intended. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and to be fair, I was in my Rose Tico jacket, so
Oh, there you go.
yeah, that is her Last Jedi. Well, it's not an exact replica. It's like literally like a big nice hooded jacket that resembles it, and it has a little patch that's the her and her sister's like little insignia. So I was like, I kind of like. I mean, Rose. I love Rose. That's one of my favorite characters from the sequel trilogies. I liked her hope. Like for me, Star Wars is a lot about hope.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know,
I love the Jyn Erso line, "The rebellions are built on hope." I think
yeah,
I quote that at work a fair amount. "Toys are built on hope. Let's make it
yeah,
happen."
right. But that was for a really long time. Every few days on my Facebook, I would post that 2016 and 2017. It's pretty weird, yeah. Rogue One though also like it had the deep fake Carrie at the end that a lot of people were really weird about, but it was like I also like went and rewatched it the weekend that we were waiting for news on her, and it's like I still tear up every time I rewatch Rogue, which is regularly. Every time it's that scene, and it's like, what have they brought us? And she's like, hope, and I'm just,
Oh, no.
oh my god, I do. I tear up a lot. So I don't know.
Ooh,
It
here's the
was
perfect brown eye color.
let's see.
Oh, rid of this
I only have like
mystery.
50 of the Crayola, so I've got dark brown, light brown. Depending on how the mahogany looks and how it blends with the dark brown, I bet you would get really close to her brown with those two.
Taking some harvest gold in the highlight area. This is
Um,
funny, I haven't read the names yet, which I usually do. You know what my favorite pastime is? Those
well,
reading nail
that's
polish names.
one of the nice things about Crayola though is the color on the barrel and the color, the pencil, the lead of it. Well, not lead, the wax, and oil mixture. For the 2 or 3 color snobs who will watch this, Yes, all colored pencils are wax and oil, but some are more wax and some are more oil. So for shorthand, we say wax and we say oil. So anyway,
Which is ironic because toys used to be made out of wax.
yeah, all those the old wax sculptures.
Mhm. There we go, and that gave us a warm
When did
iris for
when
Carrie.
did that sort of shift happen? Because it seems like it's
Mm.
been in the last 10, 15 years.
That shift happened 2010 and 2011-ish. I think, at least, at least at my company.
Cool.
All right, I've ignored everything but the portrait. I think it's looking fun. I did some highlight in the hair.
Oh,
I
that
tried
looks
to do
so
a directional lighting. All right, let's move on to the costume, which will be a challenge because it's like all white,
it's all white, yeah.
but I could bring in some purplish into the shadows if I'm light-handed with it.
Purple was Carrie's favorite color, so I'm being very artistically making artistic choices about the falcon around her. So I
Love
put
it.
some purple in there. Oh, let me quickly.
I wanted to do like when blue kind of kicks up a
Yeah.
side blue highlight. I tried a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit up here in the cheek, but I'm not sure that it came out right. So I'm gonna test some. Yeah, see, I thought this was gonna be so light, but it came out really dark over here. My
Yeah.
test page.
Every set that I have that has sort of like almost aqua-ish blues, they always come out darker than I was
Dark.
expecting them
Let's do the aqua test on a couple pencils.
to. I
So I
don't.
want to
I
kick up that sort of blue, like, ooh, that's so much lighter than that. That sort of movie poster light, you think?
Mhm. Oh yeah, that also looks like well, because it's also right behind me, but the blue that they used to use on all of her cards for the pill and for the backing of where she is, it was sort of that light, almost like a light cerulean, but not quite.
Mm-hmm.
Although back then it probably was called light cerulean because, or just cerulean because blue is that fun pigment that it's so new that every few years we get new shades of it with different names and different designations.
You mean the things that went into the pigment?
Yeah, yeah, all of that. The unofficial way of talking about it. Yeah, because yeah, there are a couple shades of blue that have just quote unquote been discovered because they're not quite what we have. They found something new and where they get the various raw materials that make pigment that is a more pure blue. So, and then
All
other
right.
pigments go away.
I'm liking this. I'm liking this aqua.
That looks really good.
I'll just kind of trace the left edges a little.
It's 100% giving me vibes of like toy packaging,
Oh yeah. Old
like I'm
vintage G.I. Joe
yeah,
gouache painted. Yeah, yeah.
or like the old Kenner dipping dots, like where they would have somebody like complete there are a couple of like completed works on there to sort of show what it would look like. I was looking at those on eBay the other day because there were some cool pictures in the dipping dots. Much better than the vintage Kenner coloring books for Star Wars.
Oh really?
Yeah, well, the vintage Star Wars, well, it comes down to like Kenner signed contracts right before Star Wars came out. So like infamously, the toys didn't come out. I was an early bird kid,
I love it. I love it.
and but because of the way they came out, I didn't get my early bird figures until after other people had bought them at stores because
Oh
so many.
no, so you had to wait?
I had to wait. My first Star Wars figure was the Death Squad Commander.
Oh, very
That
cool.
was all that's left. And I still to this day have an affection for that. Not that that precise character even actually exists, but like the various Imperial officers with the big weird helmet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the market for for the company that makes those toys. So if anyone like yourself were to design that at a toy company, like I'm your target. And
Very
yeah,
cool.
I don't know, Lobot.
Mind if I take a break for a water?
Oh no, yeah, grab it, no problem.
Right back.
But yeah, so yes, I am the old man person, and I will show. Hmm,
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect.
Oh my goodness, I have my office manager over here, but all he wants to do is purr and sleep and make biscuits in my bag. So
Oh my gosh. I'm worried
yeah,
mine might walk right across my face. My little managers around here.
yeah, he is like 8 weeks old now, so he's at that. Yeah, we have older kitties. He is a new acquisition. Oh my good. Yeah, so he's just now getting to that place where he's not wanting to bounce off the walls, and I did, although, have to drag him off of the Motu Origin shelf the other day. I looked over in between.
Oh no.
There was a little orange ginger head looking at me with his big topaz eyes, like eyes of Snake Man now. It's like, no, you
Oh
are
my gosh.
not. That
You'll
is
have
not
to
a that
you have
shelf.
to be careful training them not to walk on the toy shelf.
Yeah,
Somehow, I don't know how we lucked out, but ours do not. Our two cats do not run across the toy shelves.
I
I think it's
had
completely luck.
yeah, I had my first cat when I moved to the Pacific Northwest. Henry was not at all a toy, like didn't at all want to mess with it. Um, and that was the day where I had like lots and lots of figures sort of piled up. Like
Hmm.
I had, because I was still in the days where I bought everything, and especially there was a nice sweet spot from like 2002 to like 2008 where pretty much every Jabba's Palace person got made. Like we got a Gargon figure, I think that's how you say her name, which was one of the figures I wrote to Kenner in 1983 and asked for. It wasn't until later when I'm like, I actually now understand her design enough to know why Kenner didn't actually go forward with that figure. So okay.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I had all of those set up, and he would never go near them. 2019, my partner Matt and I adopted a bonded pair.
Oh, really? I have
Yeah,
siblings.
and the girl of the pair passed last year, so Gus has been very sad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is part of why we have this little guy, is to help play with Augustus.
A
Um,
companion. Yeah.
yeah, it's helped a lot. He's a much more cheerful. But if you've ever seen an animal grieve another animal, it's
Oh,
pretty much the worst thing. But
not looking forward to that with my little sibling pair. They're getting
yeah,
older.
it's if at all avoidable, obviously. Because not only are you mourning, but then you have to. It's not as easy to help an animal grief.
I
You got
know, they don't get it.
yeah, like so it's been a thing. But and the actual point I was going to get to is I used to have. I don't have him over here anymore, but the little like it's a little Yoda with a lightsaber. I don't even know what line he came from. Um, it was I bought some vintage stuff on eBay, and some guy just threw a cute little Yoda in there for me. Never gonna
Ah,
argue with the cute little Yoda, but I had him
adorable.
on my desk, and I would look up, and Augustus, the boy of the bonded pair, would be his eyes would be looking at me, and all of a sudden I would see his little paw come. and he would grab Yoda, so and then run off with him. So that's why Yoda does not live on the desk. But for whatever reason, it was only Yoda. Whatever reason, Gus did not like that Yoda on my desk. So
So
he
funny.
lives up.
My girl cat Zelda. There's a Zelda in Link.
Yeah.
She is obsessed with my hair ties. They disappear. I'll see her suddenly chasing them across the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Last time I found one of the kitties, den of like their hidden den, not the public one where all the toys live. I found like 7 hair ties. It's like that's why I can never find them. So yeah, I wonder what it is about hair ties. I'm just like they tend to love them. So but yeah. That was the only toy that Gus ever tried to get was that. Oh, no, I take that back, actually. He used to try to raid my desk to steal Shira's sword.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. So he would sometimes he would come pretend he wanted to hang out with me, and then he'd
The
jump on the
kitty just
desk,
wants to have the power.
grab the sword, and run off. Like of all the things you could try to steal, but at least he doesn't try to steal any Star Wars weapons because he could actually swallow those pretty quick.
Yeah, I have a little like pile in the corner of my desk. If they were chasing those around, we'd have trouble.
Yeah. So. But yeah, it's just interesting that like everyone's like every time I mention we're getting cats, you're like, oh, your collection. And it's like I haven't really had that issue with any of the cats. When I first moved in here, Matt already had his oldest cat, and his cat would sometimes Seamus would sometimes try to get my toys, but I quickly reconditioned him with a little bottle of what we call the liquid police. So a little spray bottle and
Shameless was his name. That's hilarious.
Seamus, yeah. Yeah, Matt. He was here when I started visiting back. He and I had an adversarial relationship in the beginning.
Oh,
Actually, until about 6 months ago, I did refer to him for a while as the devil cat. Um, yeah, like he may have tried to kill me one night. Like
oh no.
I went walking by and the TV flew at me, and he had positioned himself between the wall and the TV and knocked it over on me. So
Oh, it's
it was a flat
terrible.
screen though, so I caught it, and yeah, it was fine. But
Oh my god. Glad you have survived this cat assassination attempt.
yeah, so I think he finally just realized he wasn't going to get rid of me after like 7 years. So, and then I brought this kitten home, and he's suddenly like, "Oh, you're not so bad after all," because he will sleep. When we first got because we got him right at 4 weeks, and he would actually
Oh,
sleep like when the kitten, because kittens just pass out wherever.
yeah.
Like, and he would sleep a few feet away, like, and watch the kitten the whole time while trying to pretend he wasn't being sweet. So the older cat has also benefited from the kittiness of all of it, which is what sort of one of our goals was to get like a younger kitty who would help the older kitties get some playtime and help with their mental health because that sort of stuff does impact them as they get older.
Yeah.
So,
Ours are getting so sleepy as they get older.
yeah.
I try to run them around with a toy. I love the Star Wars shaped cat toys though. Oh my gosh.
I have not. I see those and then I go back and forth because I'm like that might actually encourage them to go after the toys.
I'm not sure they see the shape as branded. They just see the plushiness of it. But they've got a couple of little TIE fighters,
Oh,
cute little Star Wars toys.
I did consider
Haven't chased the plastic yet, so.
there was one point where there were I don't even know what they were for because there was that. Well, he was still Baby Yoda, but there was that one year where just every company had a Baby Yoda something, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
maybe I should grab this little whatever it is It was some sort of plushie. And I almost got that for the kitties, but then I was like, yeah, no, it looks too much like Yoda. I'm already having this issue with Augustus and the one Yoda. I don't want to add to it with encouraging him to play with a Yoda. I
I
should,
am probably responsible for 1 or 2 of those Yodas, baby
I,
Yodas myself, but
it sounds like it. I've
but
heard a few interviews over the years, so,
mhm,
which isn't a
but
bad thing
it's
if you're
quite fun.
gonna be responsible for a few things. Like, at least Baby Yoda brings a lot of people a lot of joy, so.
I know sometimes you see, like, a kid in the airport with your little baby Yoda, and they're just grinning, and, like, it's pretty sweet.
Well, I know a few people that, like, obviously younger people, because everyone over a certain age has, like, a very specific Star Wars relationship. But it's really interesting, sort of the younger people who, like, I mean, they were obviously younger for the the prequel trilogies, but, like, at the same time, like, if they weren't quite the right age, you wouldn't have printed on those as much. And it's been
Yeah,
really interesting, sort of like the new fans that who are much cooler than some of the old fans. Let's be honest. Um,
I
well,
think
I'm
both
gonna
are
be
cool,
honest.
but I think different things hit in different ways for
Yeah,
different generations of Star Wars fans.
but I
I
think
love the sequel or the prequels, and I saw them in theater. Um, I think that, like, people like to hit on, like, that the some of the dialogue and stuff, but honestly, I think the prequels world built the universe in such an incredible way.
well, yeah, completely. And
They expanded it completely, and the worlds and the universes and the way Jedi work, and, like, I think there's so much to celebrate about the prequels.
oh yeah, I'm except Padme's death, but
Well, dying of a broken heart is a little
yeah,
a
bad right.
little
I like to say she died of bad writing. So which is fair. I mean, it also didn't. That was actually one of my first bad fan moments, where, like, because I had figured it all out back at the Phantom Menace, because she had all of those handmaidens,
mhm.
um, and I was convinced that one of those handmaidens was going to die, and
Mm.
that was who they thought had passed, and then at the end we would see young baby Leia on Alderaan, and she had her own handmaiden. It was Padme. And I was like, it
Oh,
would be so
honey.
tragic, because then when you go and watch New Hope after that, you realize Padme was on Alderaan when it was blown up. Like, it added to me, like, this extra layer in my head, and I'm like, that's what he's gonna do, because it's it's so epic and so awful, and it makes the destruction of Alderaan even more personal, because and then he didn't do that, and
Right.
I
It's so
was very
funny because
disappointed.
there's a lot of, like, modern fans build their own theory and then are disappointed when it isn't that.
Yeah, and
You see it in YouTube channels, it'll be like, "It must be this connects to that, and it makes a web of amazing
yeah,
this," and,
and I've
um
certainly been guilty of that.
yeah, yeah.
But also I've come to a place where I've learned to embrace that everyone has their head canon, and a lot of that
And it's
ended
part of the
up,
fun, it's like it's all of us engaging with it and that
yeah,
kind of thing, but it is sad when it doesn't come true.
yeah, it really is, especially whenever what I thought in my head was better than what we actually. I say that, and it's like George Lucas. Somebody will bring this to him because I've spoken ill of his writing, and he'll be mad. But it's like, George, you're fine. Like, I'm insignificant at the end of it. Like, you're good, sir. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I just that was my first, like, because I didn't hate Jar Jar. I actually kind of have an affection for Jar Jar. Like,
Well, I
uh,
think Ahmed Best did such a great job at
uh,
creating an entire species and the way he talks and all that stuff. Um, I think there's a lot to appreciate about Jar Jar, and I just love the way that as he returned to the Mandalorian, the way that fans kind of re-embraced him.
Yeah.
That's like heartwarming as crap.
Well, especially when like he did several interviews where he talked about how bad the backlash impacted him.
Absolutely, and how it affected his mental health again.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely heartwarming to see him kind of returning to the spotlight and embraced by the fans.
Yeah. It's yeah, and like I don't know. Like I certainly wasn't somebody telling people not to be so hateful to him back in the day, so I certainly have my own little I could have done better back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's also been nice watching Hayden Christensen be
Oh,
finally
yeah.
embraced by the fandom and get some really meaty work.
Yes, and shine.
Yeah. Like Ahsoka for me is like the best Star Wars we've had in forever.
Oh yeah.
Although I'm probably one of the few people who are like, I really want to deep fake Carrie Fisher for this. Like I know it's awful, but I just 5 seconds. Let's get Billy Lord and do like what we did in Rise of Skywalker, just for a scene. Just it could
Just for
just
a
be
little bit. Just can I get that Leia fix?
just give me a hologram and I'm happy. Like, but I also get why they didn't do it. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it was very much like we really could use that, guys. Like, it was really I could have used that. Like, but also I don't know. Overall, like other than that, like I really liked Ahsoka was the most Star Wars thing that I've watched.
Ahsoka had strong nostalgia.
Yeah,
It was quite a cliffhanger at the end, and I
yeah,
know I was one of the ones going like, "Ah, how can you leave it there? I want this and this story to complete. I want to see more Balin and Shin." Um, but it was wonderful. It's been amazing for me to. That's one of my favorite characters, Ahsoka
yeah,
herself, and I love to see the way that she has spanned so much content. I love that she has, um, just transcended from animation into live action, and I love that she has grown up in Star Wars because I
well,
have too.
yeah. We've gotten a really good character arc from her. Like, I was not. I see every Star Wars movie in a theater 7 times. It's just the way it's been since the beginning, including the Clone Wars cartoon. Well, the
Yes,
season
me too.
and that one was difficult to get 7 times in, but I did it because that's what I do with Star Wars. I was not as much of a fan of Ahsoka until around season 3 or 4 of the Clone Wars. Like,
Yeah, in the very beginning, it was a lot of nicknames.
yeah, and that I've noticed from I liked Rebels from the get go, but Rebels didn't really start landing for me till about season 3. So
Rebels was tough transition for me from Clone Wars, and I think it was the animation style, but the art just didn't feel the same. It didn't. And then when I got used to it, it just won me over with the storytelling, and the art got better.
yeah,
Um,
I was there from the beginning with the art because I could really see like the Macquarie-ness of it.
The inspirations that
Yeah, so
draw on
like
the
for me, I
Macquarie
was
are
like,
amazing in Rebels.
yeah, for me it instantly looked like Star Wars, whereas Clone Wars it took me a while to adjust because the animation was so different than like it's
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, like the whole for me Star like I'm one of those people who actually saw the holiday special on air.
Yeah, amazing.
So like there's a really specific animation style that I think of, and the Droids cartoon sort of mimics that a little bit.
You mean
Um,
the animated bit in the holiday special?
yeah, the animated bit of the Boba Fett, the only part of the holiday special that is actually, even though I subject everyone to the holiday special every year on Christmas, every year we have to no, but also like there's on Christmas it's acceptable to make people watch B. Arthur serenade a cantina full of lookalike aliens and a snaggletooth, which was our first
And the
holiday.
rare Snivian.
Um, another cantina alien.
Mm-hmm.
I had many of those. Like I said, my mother loved those characters, so she really liked Snaggletooth because he was red and he was short. So all of the little characters. Also the Power Droid because he looked like a TV.
Yep.
So I also like that because Princess Leia needed a TV on. I didn't have a Millennium Falcon for Star Wars. It was like Millennium Falcon or Death Star. Death Star, of course. But
Oh
somebody
man,
that
if you had to pick between.
yeah, I'm playset girl every time. Playset over vehicles.
I would
Um,
say I am too. I have worked on amazing vehicles, but I love to work on a play set because it's like setting a scene.
yeah, that's part. Yeah, like because yeah, like you can sort of play with them. Like I have the well, I recently put it up so that I sort of the bigger stuff I cycle in and out. But up until recently, I had the BB-8 playset.
Oh yeah, the one that transforms kind of
Yeah,
from
I had it
BB
around.
into set. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a really cool playset. Like, I really because it had that old school like it's not quite screen accurate, but it's got play features and and I don't know like there's a thing happening on ToyTube where people are like, if it doesn't have a trap door, is it really a play set? And I'm like, I don't know if it's not because now that I think about it, like the best play sets in the '80s always had a trap door
Well,
or an
the
L.
classic playset features are like a trapdoor, a slide, a stair, a swing, an elevator, all that stuff that gets your figure moving.
Yeah,
Again, that stuff is really fun. It's part of why I do like a playset sometimes a little more
yeah,
than a vehicle, because you can take the character through the world. You can
yeah,
change the story and tell a different story. Um, there's so much play.
yeah. Well, and that like the Death Star as a kid, like there were many. I mean, I don't know how they kept ending up in that trash compactor, but it was in there a lot. So a little trash monster.
Well, Dianoga.
But yeah, so oh yes, I do. I am a playset fan, and so because they're cool. Like, but I also
Again,
get
a creature, I think too.
you know, but I also get why there aren't a lot of places because I go to stores and I see what retail spaces look like. So
Yeah, there's not always room.
mm-mm. No, and if it doesn't move right away, it's just not going to get there. So yeah, ever changing retail space.
Yeah, e-commerce now. Online sales have changed it quite a lot.
It has. So I'm not complaining. It is sort of nice sometimes to know you can pre-order from a place or, and it'll actually show up and you don't have to worry about somebody beating you to the store to get it. So
E-commerce is like, well, it saves me from the hunt, but it saves me from the hunt.
yeah,
Like, the
it's
treasure hunt was always part of the fun. When I was in
there's
art
yeah, like
school,
definitely both.
we would like finish half of our oil painting and then oil doesn't dry. So then we would run to the all night Ohio Walmart and be like, what's on the shelves?
Yeah, I remember I worked at Blockbuster for a really long time. So close at midnight. By the time you count the shelf and count the safe and clean the store and organize the shelves, it's like 1 o'clock, and I would hit the closest super Walmart on my way home, and it was right when they were stocking. So I had
Mm.
everything. Like there was nothing in Power of the Force 2 that I didn't get because I
Oh,
would get there
amazing.
right when, and toward the end of it, I would help Brian. I would just help him unbox everything, and then I would be like, "All right, I'm gonna take these 8 because 2 of everything, right?" So, and there are a few nights where if he wasn't there, the lady who worked there, I don't remember her name because she was not as kind. She
Um,
would sort of chase me off, so I would just go sit in the deli area with the Diet Coke and a bag of wow chips, because the 90s we had wow chips.
Hmm.
Um, and then I had a really long drive home, which wow chips after a while weren't. I was like, maybe I won't eat these anymore, but yeah, I would go and I would get everything, two of everything. But they were getting so much. It's not like other people
What'd
wouldn't
you do
get.
too? Did you leave one in pack?
Well, they were getting like they would get 4 or 5 cases, so it's like even if I were taking two of each figure, like they would just there was still plenty. So no, I never had to worry about stealing from like keeping other people from having it because they were just at that point getting so much because power of the force. It's just like everyone they were they sold really well until everyone thought we were gonna make lots of money off those figures. So
Oh, sure. Back in that time, it was already like sort of considered an investment.
so yeah, and I appreciate that because I may or may not buy Power of the Force stuff every time I go to like the local store, and I'm like, oh yeah, I will. An action figure on a mint on card that's still $5. I'm in.
Hmm.
Power of the Force has not seen much inflation, so
Oh, really?
yeah. At least not any of the figures I buy. I got last time I went to my local, I got a Shadows of the Empire Bausch Leia because it was $4.99, and I was like, I remember getting this. It was the day I got my wisdom teeth cut out of my head because they were all four of them were impacted. I was on Novocaine or whatever they were giving us in the 90s to like numb you. It
Hmm.
seemed very Carrie Fisher as well to like get teeth ripped out of my head, um, be on some really intense painkillers, and then go buy a Princess Leia action figure.
Right. But I got a Leia. I remember I had like, this is embarrassing on the internet. I had full braces headgear. I had like pistons that like went from the top to the bottom. I
Oh
was like not popular with the
no!
guys in high school. And but my orthodontist had an N64 and I could beat everybody in the waiting room at Mario Kart. So,
Nice.
man, sometimes that stuff gets you through.
It's true. Oh, thank you, alarm clock. My alarm clock is letting me know it's time for me to get up today.
Oh, there you go. It's
Thank
pretty
you.
early for you, right?
It's 9:13 here, so like
Oh, that's not bad.
that's a reason. I If it were a weekday, I would be 13 minutes late to work. But luckily, I work at home mostly, so
Well, thanks for
I would
accommodating my
be.
time zone.
Yeah, yeah. You're a little bit you're on the East Coast, so yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah. No, I don't always sleep in on Sundays though. As I get older, I realize some days I will just get up early anyway. I don't try to go back to bed because then also sometimes if I try to go back to bed, I'll sleep till like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So
Oh man, when I was younger, it was like full nocturnal, but these days I'm like, if I sleep in, I'm losing my time.
yeah, like that's really like it. I just think of all the things I could have done if I had been awake. So it's weird.
All of the video games I could have played if I had just gotten up early and gotten to that next level.
Lately for me, it's been like the coloring stuff. It's like all the pages I
Mm.
could have done because it's just I don't. It's really interesting. Like sort of getting into them, because like I will admit 100%. Like in 2016, my friend Kelly was like gave me coloring books. They were adult coloring books, and they were very. It was like the geometrical stuff, like mandalas, like what sort of adult coloring started out as. And I
Hmm.
remember being very snotty about oh my God, whatever. Like, I used to be a serious artist. I've got Prismacolors. Um, and I kind of just didn't, I was not a kind person to my perception of who the adult colorists were. Um, And
Well, I
then
think at the end of the day, there's a pressure on everybody, kids,
yeah,
adults, and if it can be therapeutic, if it can be relaxing, if it can take your mind off of the stressors of your day, it's a beautiful thing.
well, and also like and part of it was sort of when I decided I wanted to start doing this kind of thing on the internet. When I would go watch go watch some videos, see what people are doing, and sort of and there's stuff that I never learned in art school. Um, I had a very my professors in college were very much of the this is the only way you can do art.
That's
So
funny. Some of mine
nobody,
too. Very fine art only.
yeah. So I
What
wasn't
art
taught
school did
like
you go to?
um, it's in McNeese State University in Louisiana. So
Oh, okay. Very cool.
oh,
I went to Columbus College of Art and Design in Ohio.
see, I wanted to go to an art school, but I also didn't want student loan debt, so I went to what I could afford to pay for as I went.
It
Um,
is true. We have finally paid off both our student loan debts from art school, my husband and I, but it was whew,
yeah, like, and
a
I
journey.
don't know. I had a well, so my dad had paid his way through college, but it was also like 1980. Well, I mean, he graduated from college in 1980, so like it was so cheap back then.
Oh, I know. And
So
they're like, why aren't you buying a house yet?
well, but also though it was even cheap when I went, like in the early 1990s. Like I remember thinking, oh my God, it's so expensive to pay for an entire semester. It was like $850. Um, and I remember going and paying that in cash because I had like had a job, and then my parents were giving me money to help pay for that. And then I realized, oh, I can take because after so many hours, it was just a flat fee. So I'm like, I'll just take like all these hours and graduate early. And no,
Mm.
that was a bad choice.
Oh, why?
Because it was too many hours for me. I
Oh,
was
too many.
literally going to college like I would have to get there at 8 a.m. every day, and I would leave at like 5 p.m. every day because I took so many hours. Like it was not a wise
Interesting.
choice. I dropped some stuff by the end of the term, but
I
I was
was
like, this is
always like this, get the gold star, get the straight A student. But
I
then I interned at a toy company.
right.
And in my last year of college, I was like, okay, I've got these opportunities to freelance with the toy company that I interned with. Maybe right now I can take the B and like put my effort into where my career is eventually going to go.
Yeah, I sort of just have this thing where it's like I don't know what am I wanting to do with this, and I honestly did not finish college, just because I was like I don't know what I'm going. I had changed my major. I started out wanting to be a journalist,
Hmm.
but this was my journalism professor, and the art stuff was just for fun. But of course,
Right.
none of you can't tell that to your art professor in college because they will be insulted, especially when it
Hmm.
wasn't like entry. It wasn't like art 101. It was like I was taking the more advanced stuff because that's the level I was on. um I didn't need basics. I needed, but you don't
Like
tell them that.
theory and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right, you don't, because that's insulting to them. But so journalism was going to be my major, and my professor showed us Network and All the President's Men. And he was like, you're gonna want it to be All the President's Men, but it's really gonna be Network. And it was right
Oh,
when
yeah.
and I was in journalism schools, well, not, like taking those classes, like in the midst of, like in the time I was doing that, we had Tanya Harding and Nancy
Hmm.
Kerrigan, the Bobbitts, John and Lorena,
Yeah.
Amy Fisher and Joey Buttafuoco. So sort of all three of those things, they were spaced apart, but all of those happened while and I was just like, I don't like where the news industry is going. Like, I don't want to be a part of that.
Interesting.
So I was just like, I'm not. And then I was like, I like art, but I don't. The sort of career paths that I saw with it weren't. It's like especially where I was living, it's like be an art teacher. And I'm not, I appreciate that people have children and there are some cool kids, but they're not for me.
Yeah.
I'm a cat person. But
Yeah. I completely am with you on that.
so so I couldn't imagine being, and ironically though, a lot of why I got serious about sort of adult coloring and ended up coloring on the internet was my art teacher in elementary school. Miss Vicky was one of the, you everyone gets those teachers that impact your life.
Oh, yeah.
And I tried to reconnect with her a couple times and I could never, because Facebook makes it really easy to stalk people. But I found her daughter and I was like, is this your mom? And I'm trying to reconnect. And she was like, yeah, she's like, that would be great, but we need to, and I'll set it up for you. She's like, we do need to talk. And she was in late stage dementia.
Oh, wow.
But we got to have a few calls and she didn't remember me one of the times, but one of the other times when she's like, wait, I do know you, right? And I was like, yeah, you were like my teacher and you used to tell me I needed to, do this better. And I was like, and remember I would draw eyelashes, but they were always too perfect. And it was so weird, like, she's obviously at this point, like in her 60s, I would say.
Mhm.
And her voice sounded like that for most of the call, but all of a sudden she sounded just like she had like in 1980 something. And she was like, yeah, you have to actually draw eyelashes the way they look. They're not, you're drawing them like
You,
they're
like, snap
robots.
back? Wow.
It was the exact phrasing, the exact cadence. It was like it made me cry a lot. Because it was literally like a moment traveling back through time.
Oh, and
And
reconnecting.
yeah, and we got to talk once or twice after that. We didn't, nothing, I think it would have been too hard if that had happened again. Because,
Ooh,
that wrecked me for a little bit.
you make me tear up coloring
Yeah.
something. My grandma just
And
passed,
so,
and
but,
she
and
had
then,
very, intense dementia,
yeah,
and it
and
is hard on a family.
yeah, it really is. And her daughter and I have remained close. And I didn't like, she, took one of the years she was my teacher, she took off to have a baby. And then she
Mm,
came back. And then not long after that, I was no longer in elementary school. So I didn't actually know her daughter until I stalked her through the internet. I was like,
mhm.
I know, like, but she and I have, I don't want to say we're close, but we have this fun but weird relationship where it's like we sort of check in with each other and like it happens a lot when I'm customizing because I'll paint, like I paint the figures
Mhm.
and I'll be in the sink afterwards washing my brushes out and I'll get like like her perfume or like I'll just have this visceral memory of like her standing next to me like rinsing paintbrushes
Wow.
out telling me like and make sure you do it this way so you don't ruin the brush and like I don't know. It's part of why this is happening was that moment, and then a lot of moments after. Like I've always had Monet posters on my
Mhm.
wall and prints, and it wasn't until then I realized, well, yeah, because she like there was this art magazine we were supposed to have for the art class, um, and it was during a point where my dad wasn't making a lot of money, so money was super tight.
Mhm.
So she out of her pocket paid for me to have that magazine.
Oh, wow.
And the
She
first
sounds like a fantastic teacher.
she was amazing. Well, when I graduated high school, she sent me a card and she was like, "You have a lot of potential. Like, you should do something that takes advantage of, like." And then, of course, I kind of didn't.
Mhm.
I did, but I didn't. But that first magazine had Monet in it, and it was the Sunday in the Park. Well, that's not actually the name of it, but Sunday in the Park with George. That particular painting was what was on the cover, and it had like a fold out poster, and like for like the last 20 years, like it doesn't feel like home if that there's not a print or a poster or like a postcard or something of that painting.
Yeah.
And like that all sort of came flooding back, and I
Teachers are so incredible and impactful and
yeah,
underappreciated in everything.
yeah,
I had some great art teachers too, and I always remember one named Dr. Miller who coached me through portfolio prep to get into art college, and we did life drawing with clothes on. It was high school,
yeah,
in his studio in his class, and he had a black room. We did hands-on like physical photography and learning to manage the film in the bag so it doesn't catch light. He was magnificent, and I always appreciated everything that he taught me. Um, Teachers make a huge impact.
oh yeah, like when you've had a good one, like, and it's also easy to realize, yeah, because at the time you're like, wow, this teacher is awful or whatever. And then sort of later you kind of look back and it's like, no, the teacher wasn't awful. They were just expecting a lot out of you and trying to get you
Hmm.
sort of the tools you needed to like succeed. I mean, also I did have a few horrible teachers.
Yeah,
Um,
they happen.
they
I
happen, but
remember a guy who was a teacher. My husband and I took classes from in college, and his name was Mr. Hazelrig. He's passed now, which is very, very sad.
aw,
But he taught 3D design. He's how my husband got into toy sculpting. And he wasn't actually hard on you. If you didn't care, he didn't care.
right?
And so you could either gain a lot from him or be ignored. And like eventually he might fail you. But he just like really, really knew where to focus energy on
Yeah,
people that were passionate, um and if you brought, everything that you had to the table, he could teach you amazing things. We learned molding, we learned silicone, we took a cement mold of heads and made a whole, sort of Hollywood style sculpted mask. And like,
yeah,
we learned such amazing 3D skills from him. And then there'd be other students that were like, just, they didn't put anything into his class, so they didn't get much out of it.
right.
He was just really like, bring what you got or don't.
And there's definitely something, like they're sort of almost a stereotype of that teacher who does push everyone really hard, and but there's also something to be said for, especially at sort of that advanced level of learning, something to be said. Just the people who aren't going to try, just let them not try and like focus on the people who are,
Yeah, like,
who
okay, do you
are
have direction? Do you have passion? Are you going to take your life somewhere? Or aren't you? Okay.
right. When it's
That was
certain,
Hazel Ring.
it certainly worked out for you because you do, um, you certainly have what a lot of people would consider a dream job. So
It is really a fortunate thing and a fun one. I don't think I realized I would be like a corporate artist. That's why I got a video game tattoo in college. But it's magical to make stuff physical. It's magical to take art and then make it plastic and real in your hands and touchable and bendable and articulatable.
I
Um,
mean, like you definitely have been responsible for. Well, I mean, like you're doing a particular costume, and if I've done my math correctly, based on when a particular version of that character came out, you probably are the reason I finally got that figure after wanting it since 1980. Like,
oh, it's so cool.
yeah, when Power of the Force 2 started and they did that Dagobah Luke, like the
Hmm.
training Luke, I was like, I bet I finally get my Bespin Escape Leia.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
called her Disco Suit Leia because she had
yeah.
those cool
Well, this
disco.
one, she's the one I'm coloring.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why when I saw you pick that, I was like, that's perfect. Because
Oh, good. I love it.
I'm pretty sure, just,
It's
I
funny. I went through all your pages. I've got the stack. I could not pick. I loved so
oh, it was
many.
so like,
Is this a sneak preview that's okay on your channel?
oh yeah, oh
The
that
red
one.
dress best
I've
for
got
Leia
yep, I've
was
got a
my
short
top
that one.
My second pick. I loved that one. I was
I
between
did
these
that one
two
as
for
well.
my second.
Well, that one is just the best when Leia in general is that one of those characters. I can't remember if I apologize if I repeat anything I told you in sort of when we were setting everything up. Um,
Hmm.
but when my mother was pregnant with, it was April 1980, and Empire Strikes Back toys were out, but not everywhere because it was sort of like now where like certain areas get them before others. And my brother was being a very long and difficult birthing process. And the
Hmm.
hospital was in Temple, Texas. And right across the street from the hospital was a mall with the toy store. And my dad and like probably his mom, that grandma, would have wanted to get me out of the hospital because it'd been many, many hours and take me over to the toy store because
Yeah.
and they had Empire Strikes Back figures and Bespin Leia was there. And at the time, red was my favorite color,
Oh, amazing.
but I also loved pink, and she had that amazing cape.
Yes.
And we had not, like technically it's a spoiler because nobody has seen Empire Strikes Back. But for like the month and a half that I had that figure until the movie, like all of the, like all of the headcanon that happened, all of the, and of course she wears it for like 20 seconds total.
Pretty quick.
But that actually just made it more cool to me. Like,
Mm.
like that sort of stuff. Like, when Force Awakens came out, there was one character, what, Constables
Zuvio.
Zuvio,
Yeah.
who had no actual scenes in the movie, and people were like, there were some people unhappy about. Yeah,
When
like
we like work on a toy for it to come out in timing with the movie versus when we make one a little later,
yeah,
stuff can change.
right.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I prefer it that way. I'd love to get stuff out on content when we can. The line
yeah,
is not always the line that I work on. It's not
yeah,
always big
yeah,
enough to get all of it out at that kind of timing. But
yeah,
it's it's definitely potential for stuff to be confidentially held back, and you don't
yeah,
know it till
yeah,
you see it on screen. But you made the toy a year ago.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it's a funny thing.
Well, yeah, yeah, and I mean, there are people who get sort of, but again, like for many of us, you know, like Boba Fett is only a character because we had that action figure and we had no real idea of what Boba Fett was about.
Almost even cooler when you
Yeah,
didn't know what to fill in and you made it your own, and he was just this
yeah,
cool bounty hunter hero.
and that's like I know there are probably people who would try to argue with me, but the entire reason Boba Fett is the epic character he is because we had no clue. We made it all up.
Hmm.
And then, like some people are like, and you've only got like 5 or 6 seconds in Empire. And that's actually even more awesome because he's still so much left up to your imagination. And like, it's the whole reason we have so many people who still to this day love Boba Fett because Boba Fett was sort of choose your own adventure.
Yeah, Boba Fett is insert your own badass.
You know, so I don't know. But yeah, Bespin Leia, like, I also just love Bespin. Like, it was all those pretty pastels and Lando
Yeah,
is so charismatic and
yeah.
I could have swore I had read somewhere that Lando is one of your favorite characters. So I may have thrown a Lando picture in that file for you to
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I
so
don't know if
that,
he's my top tier, but I've worked on some Lando figures that I have loved to bring out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'm a fan. So
I'm gonna pull one up from my shelf behind me. Um, I had a lot of fun
oh
with
my
this
god, that
young
one's great.
Lando. He was both in the solo movie and in video gaming,
Yeah.
and just total technical toy nerding over here. But this is the first time I got to use digital printing, like the
Oh my
inkjet
god.
that was on the
Yeah.
faces on the texture of his shirt. So we were making the tiny little pattern of his shirt able to be printed
See,
across
like
his head. So I just really geeked out on the toy,
I'm
like
gonna be
behind
really
the scenes.
I'm gonna be really good right here, but I'm just gonna say, wow, the miracles that sort of technology could do on a cape that would belong to somebody in Bespin. That's yeah.
The restraint.
Yeah, I'm being very restrained right now. But but no, that's actually one of my it is one of my favorite. I don't have him opened yet. That's sort of what's been happening lately because we're in an apartment while we plan for the next phase of buying and selling and stuff.
Hmm.
So I have to cycle. It's good for restraint, but what happens now is I buy the cool stuff. Not all of it gets opened right away, and then when
Yeah,
it's
we
time to
certainly have
cycle,
supplies in the basement and supplies that are out and toy bins and
so every so often I go to one of the big bad toy store boxes and I'm like, it's time to bring these three things. And then it's like Christmas because I get to open 5 or 6 things that have just been waiting. So,
hmm.
but that one he's like on the next list when it's time to cycle some stuff out. I've got a lot of the solo stuff, like, because I quite enjoyed that movie. Like, um, it was just fun and like it was an adventure and
I need to give it a rewatch, but I enjoyed it too.
I thought it was really a sad movie too. Like, Star Wars is, technically a very except for the middle chapters, which are always sort of a bummer, and Revenge of the Sith. Like that whole movie is a bummer. But it's supposed to be. But Solo was a little bleak, and it was like really in a good way though. Like it was really fun for me to see sort of the young idealistic Han. And to me, it sort of makes more sense why he is like he is when we meet him.
Right.
And but
Hated.
it also sets up like him actually falling for Leia because like Kira has a lot of sort of the same sort of traits, but it's sort of like a dark mirror of what Leia would have been if she had, if she'd been raised as Vader's daughter. Sort of,
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting take.
yeah, she's a very strong and I mean like she's obviously not all bad. And I say that as someone who hasn't read all of the comics. I'm still a little behind on the Marvel stuff.
Oh, I got behind on during COVID on the Marvel comics, but I
I
was
got
really
ahead.
enjoying them.
I got what happened with that was like because I don't do monthlies anymore. I can't. It upsets me to have to wait. But if
Hmm.
I do a collection, then you get like a whole chunk of the story, and then it's satisfying, and then you sort of wait. And so I had technically gotten behind, and then during the lockdown, I bought a bunch of them, and I would order 2 or 3 of all of the series, and then I'd catch up, and then I would order a few more. But then I
Hmm.
got to the point where there was nothing left to order because I was all caught up, and then I fell behind. And it was right when they brought Kira into the storyline, so I
You
need.
know what happened to me? I had my Star Wars Marvel comics in the office, and then COVID happened and got locked down, and it was like, never enter this building again.
Oh my god!
I forgot which issues I had, which volumes,
Oh
and
no!
they were trapped there.
Oh
The
no!
trapped comics. It was terrible.
That's horrible.
Really threw me off the horse. I
Yeah,
came back and there had been I'm in a window office and there had been a water bottle that was white plastic and it's perfectly half yellow
oh
and
my
then from the
god.
sunshine and then half white on the other. I'm also careful about which toys live in the office because of the
Yeah,
window.
yeah. Yellow bubble. I
Pretty
was
bad.
unpacking my vintage GI Joe stuff the other day, and my vintage Scarlet like is she has a yellow torso, and I'm like, but you have been in the perfect temperature and like
Oh
it's
no.
1982 plastic. She's doesn't have the swivel. It's like first wave, no swivel arms. So
Mm-hmm.
I was online like, do we still dip them in peroxide? But what about her hair? And
There's something now about charcoal and dryer sheets, and I
yeah,
haven't learned the technique yet, but
I watched that and it horrified me. So I was like, I will come back to this when I feel, because that Scarlet was Mon Mothma for me for many years.
Mm.
because she makes a very good vintage. Well, not anymore. Thanks, Retro Collection. Um, but for many years, that was a retro Mon Mothma for me.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and she was also Scarlet. She did double
Oh,
and
pretty.
triple duty. But yeah, it threw me. Like, it's not like she's been like in a shoebox, and like she was in an individual like plastic bag, and there's like the little silicone and some packing peanuts, and it's not in a lighted place, and she was
Hmm.
not at all yellow when she went into it. And I was mortified. I was just like, I'm a bad toy collector. I mean, we've all got stormtroopers that you look at them the wrong way and the next day they've turned yellow.
Oh, yeah.
That's the curse. I mean, they can't shoot for anything. They can't see those helmets. They're gonna turn yellow. It's what they do.
I have a sad couple of droids at the office, too. I have to be careful. Careful what toys live at the office. And of course, you want your office full of toys,
Yeah,
but they will pay the price.
right. The sun is unforgiving.
I've
It's
gotten
good.
into coloring the background now, and I'm having a little bit of regret. I'm like, did I dig in too much here coloring the background? Do you usually do it?
I usually do. That's when I usually break out the Quran Dash water soluble crayons.
Oh, you
And you
got a
can tell
trick for it. I'm just over here like a punk,
yeah,
line after line of colored pencil.
yeah, if you well, I'm not saying this to like hype my own stuff per se, but if you go and look at my Voltron and my
Mm.
first Leia, the one from the like the very first Leia I posted in shorts way back when, they look like Crayolas, but they're water soluble. So like I just sort of go
Mm.
in and scribble really loosely with them, and then go in with a water
With the
brush, and
blender?
then get it wet, and then move it all around. And like if you put pink, like for Star Wars, I often do like candy. Well, actually, I can show you because my completed files are over here. The stuff I haven't scanned yet is over here. Um, and this will be a sneak peek for when I make this go live on Saturday. So this one's already posted, but that's how I will let me make this big.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, cool.
this background is those, but see, there's my best friend.
So pretty, the colors.
And then I did that one because I was like, and then afterwards he was like, you're having Lando choked out, and I'm like, it's too late. I already posted it. But yeah, here's some Star Wars space that I did with the Grand Dash.
Oh, wow, look at the colors in your
Yeah, so I
space.
just go in and scribble. It looks really like a kid on the wall, but once you get the water and start squishing it around, then you go in with like a white paint pen and do your little stars.
Oh, you've got me inspired. I think that I'm gonna have to fade some black into some purple up here.
Oh yeah, well, nothing again. Purple is one of Carrie's favorite colors.
I've
That's why.
used it in the shadows of her suit here. So let's bring out solid purple.
Yeah, and sometimes I will. I have a set. They're Starjoy Gold.
Mm.
Yeah, and they're technically again budget pencil, but it's like $25 for the 120, and they are oil pencils. I use those a lot for backgrounds because I'll do the grip where it's like I come back here and then do the real long. And I'll do a couple layers with that of different shades and get, because usually when I'm going for a background, I want something really even that's gonna. I learned really early on when doing the shorts that people stopped watching my shorts after I finished the skin and the hair.
Oh, funny.
So it became really weird because like I prefer to do the main figure first and then build back from that.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas now, like I do the backgrounds and work my way forward so that the main figure is the
Save
last
the
one.
good part.
Yeah, and that of course that made perfect sense once I figured it out. And it's been good because like it really sort of made me like I have to really know the colors I am going to use once I get there. Yeah,
Hmm.
often for Leia, it's really, she's in white half the time. Um, so it's a lot easier than like when I do a Barbie page or whatever, and it's like it's gonna be a pink, but what pink? And
219C, Panto nerds.
so, but yes, it's like little things like that where it's like having to sort of rethink, because you don't want the background to clash, but it also needs to be interesting enough when you're doing it so they don't just swipe away. So, sort of odd to do like art on demand for well, well, to me, but it's probably a little, like with what you're doing, you kind of have to. Where's that sizzle gonna be? Like, what's gonna catch somebody's eye when they see it on a shelf or like in a.
That's true. We think about a try-me at shelf. We think about the commercial.
So it's just so interesting, because usually when you're doing art, it's like it's not
Personal for
live on.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know though. That's again, that's kind of sort of the fun part of it for me though is sort of learning how to sort of do an arty thing with like kids coloring book, especially of the 80s. There's some terrible art in some of these. There were a few. There is not a lot of New Hope stuff because a lot of those coloring books are really. But again, like because the toys didn't come out, like they just coloring books are really easy to throw together. Like and the story I have heard is that Kenner in Canada hired a bunch of Canadian art students to draw them and gave them reference photos, and some of those reference photos were actually just panels from like the Marvel comics.
Oh, funny.
So, which when you look at them, there are some that it's just literally like looks like somebody badly traced some of those panels.
Oh no.
But it was something they could get out and they could get out fast that people could buy. There's one of them has really good art. I have not found a
Is
copy
it
of it
your
yet for a
is it your
reasonable
grail
price.
item? Are you trying to hunt for it?
It's kind of one of them, yeah. I mean, like there are a couple that are on eBay right now, but it's really hard, technically to justify dropping like $100 plus shipping on a coloring book.
The coloring. Oh yeah.
So
Well, if you get in real deep on your channel.
yeah, like eventually I'm gonna like yeah. So yeah, there are also people who like are archivists of the old coloring books that like
Really?
they buy them, they scan them, they will sell you a PDF copy of it. Um, which is great because even when it's a book I have, I like to support the people who are trying to archive this stuff,
Hmm.
because I do feel like there is a lot of good art in some of these. So, people trying to do archives and trying to make it, again, like I said, some of these have like really cool stories in them, or some of the art is really good. Like, as much as I did not appreciate Barbie much as a kid, I have come to appreciate her as over the last few years. There's some really gorgeous art in some of those old Barbie coloring books.
I could tell you why I appreciate Barbie. When I played with Barbie, I was a correctly Barbie age 90s kid. I loved totally hair Barbie. I had all these certain 90s Barbies in my toy
Yeah,
box, but I have a personal connection with Barbie. My grandma, the same one that we talked about with dementia in her old age, um, she was like a magically fantastical seamstress, and she
yeah.
taught me to sew,
Oh,
which has led into a lot of the stuff I do around Halloween for costumes. I wouldn't call myself a cosplayer because I do it once a year,
yeah,
um, not habitually and not for conventions, but um, my grandma taught me to sew, and she would make my mom and her sister handmade Barbie outfits.
Oh,
And like if they had a book report about Romeo and Juliet, she'd
yeah.
turn their Barbies into Romeo and Juliet. Like
Oh, wow.
she brought that skill to her family in an amazing way. And
That's really cool.
her skill of seamstressness lives on in a very minimal way in me, not as good as she was.
Yeah,
But the Barbie was her canvas. It was her artistic hands-on craft.
that's really
Um,
cool.
and the whole family loved to share that with her. So that's my Barbie connection. When I went to see the Barbie movie, I was definitely thinking about grandma.
Well, see, I went to that expecting to hate watch it, like because the previews did not set me up. And I'm actually happy for that. It was really nice to get there and realize I
Pleasant
wasn't
surprise.
getting. Yeah, it was like it came. The little bits we got, it came across as very vacuous and very strange. And then, of course, it was, but it was well, not vacuous, but it was like it was kind of strange, but it also made sense.
Heartwarming, strange, right?
Yeah, it was like, and then Weird Barbie was really I love Kate McKinnon in general. She's my second
Hmm.
favorite Ghostbuster. Leslie Jones being the first.
Hmm.
I was not. I mean, I'm not. I shouldn't say this on the internet. I will be canceled by the end of next week. But I wasn't a huge Ghostbusters fan as a kid. I didn't necessarily get what everyone loved about that movie.
Hmm.
Um, and so for me in 2016, I was a huge Kristen Wiig fan and loved all the Saturday Night Live ladies that were in that. I'm here for it. And I
Hmm.
just really liked it. I was like, this is fun. It was trying to be a fun movie. And like, there just aren't a lot of fun movies.
Yeah.
Um, so I quite enjoyed it. And those are my Ghostbusters. So internet cancel me away, but
It's
you
all
know,
good.
so,
You know what? Different media connects with us differently. I loved the Ghostbusters cartoon.
yeah, that was, well, I think, yeah, like a lot of the people I know who really love Ghostbusters, it seems like it's that love is through that cartoon. I was a little too old for that. Like I was already in high school when that started, or almost in high school.
Yeah, I was defiantly like watching cartoons too old myself. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, and like turtles, my connection to the turtles is that my brother was really into them, and I would play April O'Neil whenever I would, when I would babysit or whatever. Like I would be April O'Neil, like, and that was his turtle play. So, and
my
that's where I have
husband
a
and
couple.
I are actually going to be April and Casey Jones this
Oh,
Halloween. So
nice,
I've got my yellow jumpsuit ready and curl up my hair a little.
classic April.
Yup, super classic, bright yellow April. It's
That
gonna be a
was
blast.
It's my only Super Seven turtle is that April they did in the yellow, and she's just. People
Yeah,
were complaining. I'm like, that's a really pretty figure. Like her face is really pretty. Like they were like, but the plastic is weird. I'm like, it's based on a toy. Like it looks like a pretty toy. Like just stop trying to ruin this for me, guys.
stop trying to dim my shine on this toy right now.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Like yeah, there are definitely times where I'll see a toy and it doesn't hit, and I am tempted, and I will sometimes in the moment fall into like whiny person. And I quickly move past it because I'm like, it's not that big of a deal, guys.
I think I'm a little bit industry cursed.
Yeah,
Sometimes I pick up a toy and I'm like, the deco's kind of off. I would have commented on that.
yeah, right.
It's
Like,
kind of bad when you know too
and,
much and you're like, well, if this were my toy, I would have sent comments to factory on X, Y, and Z. It's terrible. It's when you know too much.
yeah, that would definitely be and it's like when I worked at Blockbuster and we go to another Blockbuster, I'm like, oh my god, they've clearly not vacuumed or anything, and like, yeah, just all the stuff you see that not everyone else gets.
Hmm.
I think that's kind
Um,
of the thing, though. There are a lot of fans who have a little bit of knowledge, but not enough, but they don't quite realize that. And like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can pick up, but there's just some things like unless you're actually sort of used to working with the factories or whatever, you're not going to know that stuff. So
yeah, you won't know the limitations or the production quirks.
I'm going to put your picture back up front. I thought I had already done that, but it was still me. So
Oh, no problem. Yours was awesome to see. I haven't been able to see as much.
going
Yeah,
in and
I'm
doing
just
all
back
the
here coloring in my star field.
shades. Yeah, I'm kind of just to that point where I'm picking at it. But that's also for me, like where sometimes the role, like when I'm going in and layering all the extra shades and like doing the face and stuff, like I don't know. I do like when I get a little Dario Argento with color, like that sort of
Oh, who's
hyper
that?
technicolorness of it.
Who's
That's
Daria Argento?
yeah. Oh, you don't. Oh, he's an Italian director. Have you ever seen Suspiria, the original horror
I
movie from
haven't.
the I would it's very I'm
Is
not
it on
sure
my
how
list?
you do with violence and gore. It's
Up it.
it's very 70s violence and gore, but it's also because it's a completely different time. Some of it's a little I mean, like it's Italy in the 70s was quite misogynistic.
Yeah, it's all good.
So some of it doesn't land in that way, but just his use of colors and music, it's like a fever dream. So if you enjoy horror movies
Mm.
and you can sort of tolerate, and it's like the blood is red, it's like it's the last movie that was made in technicolor, and he takes full advantage of the like there are all these lenses that are bright reds and blues and pinks, and
Well, I'll have to put this on my October
yeah, it's
list.
very visual. So it's like the story is nonsense, like it's an American girl goes to a German ballet school and it's run by witches and stuff starts happening and she's got to
Suspiria?
figure out the mystery. Yeah, Suspiria.
Ooh, thank you for the reco.
Yeah, you're welcome. Like, yeah. So, but anyway, like he does that with colors a lot. Like the lenses will, and he does weird camera angles, and you know, it's very much about sort of the artness of it. Which, as an arty nerd person, I can certainly geek out on. I've certainly watched some bad movies that had really beautiful art direction and just sat there and enjoyed the colors and the cinematography and the
Absolutely. The
it's,
art
well,
nerding of it.
yeah, like when Phantom Menace first came out, and people were like, "How can you like that?" I'm like, I didn't. Like the first time I watched Phantom Menace, I paid so much more attention to all of Amidala's like ornate costumes and like how
Yeah.
everything looked. I missed so much of what actually happened because I was just the color and
Well, the
you know,
rewatch value. Yeah.
because the original trilogy is very much all earth tones. Like other than Cloud City, like
Yeah.
even indoor,
Tatooine has a lot of tan. It could be
yeah,
called Tantooine.
yeah, and and even indoor, it's like greens and it's all earthy based. Everything's beige and taupe, and like nothing wrong with that because that is sort of also how the 80s and 70s looked. It was very. I watched someone on YouTube, like, because you get all these, a lot of people who make like film dissertation videos that don't quite get context of stuff. And he was doing a thing on the original Exorcist, and he was like the use of browns here and there, and like this elephant statue, and he's like going into all of the stuff that meant. I'm like, oh, sweetie, you weren't alive at all during this, and you didn't talk to anyone who grew up then. Everything in the early 70s and late 70s was brown and boring and tacky.
And sometimes
Everyone had
orange.
these weird animal statues made out of wood, like that was the aesthetic. The art direction here isn't trying to, like isn't saying anything in that respect. The art direction here is trying to get across that even though Chris McNeil is this famous Oscar-winning actress, and she's got this difficult divorce. She and Reagan are very typical all-American. They're just like you and I, because look, their house looks just like yours.
It's just as 70s brown as yours.
Yeah, right. And it cracked me up. Like I see, yeah, and
I must have gone brown for the meaning of X.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like no, it's just everything was really brown. Like like yeah, it's even in 80s, like Stranger Things often will do really colorful, really like brightness, but they also sometimes show just how brown the 80s were at times. Like the 80s had
Yeah.
there were 2 or 3 years where everything was really bright, but for the most part, it was pretty beige. Like,
Yeah, there's this memory of the 80s being bright from certain pop culture things or certain areas of it, but the home of the family in the time was not that bright.
mm-mm. I remember we got like a baby blue couch at one point, and it was the only thing not brown in our entire house. Like the bookshelves, the curtains, we had brown well, they were like a creamy brownish beige, and I just thought, and the blue, like we had to get new curtains because the beige ones didn't match the couch, and my mom really wanted that couch. It was a great couch though, so
The couches of our youth.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. I'll see that on YouTube, and I don't ever go in and just like be that old person. Like, no, no, because at least
Well, in fact, yeah.
yeah, right. Because he's, like this kid is actually thinking about movies, and like I definitely don't want to like stomp that. Like he'll figure it out if
hmm
he stays at it, and he
That's
does.
good. Not gatekeeping, but on the other side, you're like, well, if you'd been there.
Yeah, right. So it's, I don't know. It's also just like like at that age, I was also that know-it-all, and that's also part of being like, especially if you're a sort of art nerd or a film nerd or whatever, there's that whole phase where you're just obnoxious and completely see too much into everything. And
Mm.
fun part of the evolution of all of that is, like in 5, 10 years when he goes back and watches that video and he's like, oh my God, I was so pretentious.
Let him realize.
Yeah, right. Let him figure it out. He'll grow better than if some rando leaves a rude comment. Not even rude, but it's just like it can easily come across as there's no tone on the internet, so it's really easy to come across rude when you're not actually trying to be rude. So
Correcting, especially can. That's funny. Do you watch the YouTube show, actually?
I don't. I'm writing that down there because it sounds like I would like that.
It's magnificent. It's funny. It's about the way that nerds like to correct each other turned into a meme show where you have to chime in and say, actually, and then you can give your answer to find the one tiny thing that was wrong with the prompt question.
I'm like I'm like 5 or 6 things from like being at the point where if I don't stop, I'll ruin it.
Where you
But I'm
gotta
not
pull
there
back?
yet. I'm not
Mm.
there quite yet. Like almost. It's like it needs a little bit more pink or a little bit more purple, and then I'll know it's done.
I think I could easily overdo the space behind her.
Yeah, it's especially space because well, especially with the background because like the background there's nothing, it's not enough, and then oh wait, I'm 3 steps into too much now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. I've used that pink, that pink. Okay, you know what I need for
What
this.
do you do with your pieces once you finish them?
I have been I just right now scan them and then put them in a plastic sleeve, and then they go into a trapper keeper. Um,
Perfect.
once I get to the point where I can, you have to get so many followers or whatever before you can have memberships. But once I get to that point, I'm going to, because I'm scanning them and I don't want to carry all of this art around me forever. I was like, this would be a good giveaway whenever I can do channel memberships. Like, it's a
There
way
you
to
go.
get some art out there, but also just, and there are a few that I've set aside to gift to people. There have been, because I was not always sure I was going to want to do anything like this. And I've had several people who have been very like, you should do it. You're really good at this. You can do it. Um,
Absolutely.
so some of them will be getting pieces with like their favorite characters and whatnot. So I've got, I have a long form video of Bausch or Boosh, depending on
Mm.
your pronunciation, that will be out in a few weeks. I'll make it big really quick.
I'll have to tune in.
Yeah, so it's
Ooh.
and so one of the people who was really encouraging, this is his favorite Leia variant. And
Mm-hmm.
it has Hermie Odal in the back.
Hermie Odal, yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna like I I was like, I need your address for a thing. So I'm going to make sure he gets that because I sort of wouldn't be doing this if not for a lot of encouragement from him. So
Oh, you do great at it. I've
yeah.
loved picking through your channel and seeing what you've colored.
Well, and he's gonna come on in color in a few weeks. So and I've told everyone that it's sort of been part of why I get here that, like you are definitely gonna come on in color. Like that's been the fun thing. Like I did last night, a week ago by the time when this airs, but last night I got to interview a guy who does custom work that I really like.
Oh, cool.
And we were only gonna stream for 2 hours, and then it ended up being almost like after we went off live, we still talked behind the scenes. We were sort of chatting for like 4 hours because it was just super cool to like get to talk to somebody who's creating stuff and like sort of reinforcing like people who are like sort of playing with their toys and being creative with it are a lot happier
Yeah.
in their fandom, and like it's helped me emphasize that like I definitely want this to be part of what I do here. Like I do tooling videos for Masters of the Universe stuff because their reuse translates to a lot of characters.
Mm-hmm.
So and those are fun. I get to do the history of those certain characters and then trot out some of my customs. I am
You ever do time lapse for your customs?
huh? I'm sorry.
Do you ever do like time lapse videos for your customs?
I have not. Like I have not found. I am very piecemeal when I do custom, so I will basically kit bash it all together and
Yeah, I get that.
and then it would take a really long time to do the time lapse for it. There are a few that it would probably work. So, but so far I haven't found one that would be ideal for it. I do have a spare Black Series Ceremonial Leia and a spare Black Series New Hope Leia. I'm tentatively planning on doing a recreation of the Hildebrandt poster Leia.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's gonna be sort of my first Leia custom because that poster was like everything as a kid. My dad had a art book of the Hildebrandt, and that was like the last page.
Oh, awesome.
So
I have a bag with it on it.
yeah, it's just such a great. It's so iconic. Like so, and I was like, it's a really easy. It's basically a head swap, and it's basically a head swap. So like, it'd be really silly not to make it happen when I have the like it's a little boil and pop and a little patience, and I will probably replace the cape. I have some of that shimmery mermaid material, like they got used a lot in the 80s. So I have some that's like greenish crystal. So it's got like green and pink and like it's really shimmery and it's like sheer capes. So switch the capes and give her like a shimmery cape so that it's Hildebrandt but sparkly. So,
Hildebrandt, but make it glam.
yeah, right. It's kind of, like a little bit of sparkle is never a bad thing. So and it's just gonna have that. It'll have that 80s vibe to it, which sort of
Love that.
80s vibe, which is sort of my vibe. Like when I
I am
custom,
enjoying how this one came out with the blue highlining. It is
oh my
very
god, it's really
airbrush 80s poster for me.
it looks really good. Yeah, I like your stars also.
Thanks.
I'm gonna try that on something. I'm gonna stop relying on my Karan Dash all the time. My paint pens.
Your space looked very real. This is a little more
It
childish,
does,
maybe.
but like I do it a lot, so it's like at some point you have to mix it up at least a little bit.
Yeah. So I just traced them and then left the white spot.
No, simple, basic, but effective.
All right, I think I'm at the point where I should noodle it too much more.
Yeah, I'm just got there because I'm like, all right, the hair looks good, everything. I'm gonna leave the floor behind her white so that it helps give what it needs.
Hmm.
So yeah. Oh, it looks so good. Like, that looks really awesome.
Thank you.
And like that is I have not done that layer yet. Like I have it printed and I'm like, so it's really cool to see one that I haven't done yet transformed.
Oh, good.
It
I'm glad
it
I
really
have a
does.
different one.
It literally like I could see that as art on a toy package. So which for you is probably not like the people who aren't sort of in the industry would probably be like, oh wow. For you, it's just like, well, yeah. Like, why I do what I do. It looks really good. I adore
Thanks.
it.
This is a fun adventure in colored pencils. I haven't done this in so long.
Well, and here's the great part. Like I sort of mentioned, there are people who are a little shady about Crayola and their bargain pencilness of it all, but that looks that looks like it could be Prisma's. So
Yeah, these Crayola packs did me totally fine.
yeah, so 100%. It doesn't matter what you got as long as you sit there and give it the attention it needs.
That's right. Give it the care.
That looks so good. Thank you, Emily.
No
Uh,
problem. Thank you, and thanks for the coloring page scan.
you're welcome. I'm going to quickly show mine off for just a second. There we
Oh
go.
my gosh, I love the purples and pinks.
Um,
You're
it
just so
looks,
imaginative. That's awesome.
yeah, but I like yours better. So
No, you're great at this.
getting there. Like I don't, I enjoy it a lot, and I hope that is what comes across. Like it's really fun. I like figuring it out. I also am really coming to love having somebody on to color with them. It's much better than sitting here and listening to just true crime. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I love the chat.
so, so, and it's actually, oh my goodness, it's actually, we've been at this quite a bit. So, and we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Normally, this is where I would ask my guests where they can be found. I'm going, you obviously don't have a YouTube channel or social
No.
media, but, and we're being a little coy about things for obvious reasons, but I would say you can find Emily and her work on your favorite toy aisle.
That's the one.
Yeah. Um, Thank you again, Emily, and thank you to everyone who watches this. It's Allison Troy, Retro Toy Princess, signing off. Have a great day.
Thank you, Allison, and see you, everybody.